You've probably heard that poverty and environmental damage are connected, right? But the story is way more complicated than you might think. Is poverty the cause of all this destruction, or is it the most tragic consequence? Honestly, it's a tangled, vicious cycle, and today we're going to try to unravel it.
So first things first, let's get on the same page with a key term, environmental poverty. Now, the most crucial part of this definition is that last bit. It's a problem caused by human activities. This isn't about random natural disasters. No, this is about the mess we've made ourselves, a mess that actually threatens our ability to survive.
And that leads us to the big central question of this whole explainer. When we talk about fixing environmental poverty, is economic growth the hero or the villain? Do countries need to get rich to finally get clean, or is that relentless chase for growth the very thing that's killing the planet? This question basically splits everyone into two big camps. Okay, let's start with the optimists. This side believes that the solution to our environmental woes is, and this might sound a little weird at first, more economic development. The idea here is that growth isn't the enemy at all. It's actually the tool we need to fix the damage we've done.
So this optimistic view is really built on three main ideas. First, the belief that poverty itself is a huge environmental threat because it can force people to do unsustainable things just to get by. And this leads to two big theories. One that says, hey, we got to get dirty before we can get clean. That's the environmental Kuznets curve. And another that argues modern capitalism can actually innovate its way to being green. Let's dig into that first one.
The environmental Kuznets curve, or EKC, basically says things follow this upside-down U shape. The idea is pretty simple. As a country starts to industrialize, yeah, pollution gets way worse. But, and this is the key part, once that country gets rich enough, it suddenly has the money, the tech, and the public demand to start cleaning things up, and that's when environmental quality starts to improve again.
You know, a great way to think about it is like a messy room. When you're a little kid, your room is mostly clean. Then you become a busy teenager, you've got other priorities, and your room becomes an absolute disaster zone. That's the peak of that upside-down U. But eventually, you're an adult with some time and money, and you finally clean it all up. The EKC theory says whole countries do the exact same thing.
Now, the other optimistic theory, ecological modernization, takes this even further. It says that wealthy societies don't just clean up the old mess, they actually change how the whole system works. As people stop worrying about basic survival, their values shift. They start demanding greener products and tougher regulations. This pushes companies to innovate, and eventually, economic growth and environmental damage get decoupled. They don't have to go hand in hand anymore.
But as you can imagine, not everyone is buying this optimistic story. The other side of this debate argues that the very engine of our economy, capitalism's built-in need for constant growth, is fundamentally destructive. They say it simply can't be greened.
And the core idea for the pessimists is called the treadmill of production. It's such a powerful metaphor. Imagine our economy is on a treadmill that is always speeding up. To stay on, businesses have to constantly grow and make more profit. This forces them to pull more and more resources from the planet and spit out more waste. It's a cycle that can't be stopped without the whole system just falling apart.
And you know, this cycle just feeds itself. The hunt for profit drives new technology. But instead of fixing the problem, that new tech just makes the treadmill go faster, letting us use up resources even more efficiently. And to protect those profits, there's often a huge push to weaken environmental rules, which just pours more fuel on the fire, speeding up the whole cycle of growth and pollution.
And this treadmill isn't just happening in one country, it's a global thing. This has led to something called ecologically unequal exchange. Basically, it means that wealthy nations often keep their own backyards clean by, well, outsourcing the dirty work. The pollution, the resource extraction, that all gets pushed onto less developed countries. The rich countries get the benefits while others pay the steep environmental price.
So here it is, side by side. You've got the optimists who see technology as our savior and believe capitalism can change for the better, and then you have the pessimists who see that exact same technology as just an accelerator for destruction and believe the entire system is the problem. We're talking about two totally different diagnoses of the problem, which means they come with two totally different solutions.
Okay, so we have these two giant, competing economic theories, but let's be real, they can feel a little abstract. The truth is, the environmental damage they're describing doesn't hit everyone the same way. To really get the full picture, we have to zoom in on the human factor, on inequality, and on the choices we all make.
And this brings up a really critical question. If all this environmental harm is happening, who's actually bearing the brunt of it? And why do we keep consuming stuff in ways that just seem to fuel the problem? This is where the whole idea of justice comes into play.
The environmental justice movement makes a really powerful point. Environmental problems are social problems. At its core, it's about fairness. It's the simple idea that no one group of people should have to deal with a bigger share of pollution or toxic waste than anyone else. But it recognizes that, in the real world, that's exactly what happens, all the time.
And the studies are crystal clear about who these groups are. The burden of environmental harm, everything from air pollution to where waste dumps are located, falls heaviest on communities based on race, class, and other social factors. It's a textbook case of social injustice, where the people who are already at a disadvantage get hit the hardest yet again.
So this brings the focus right back to us. Because that treadmill of production we talked about, it needs fuel to run, and that fuel is our consumption. We don't just buy things to survive. Sociologists argue that what we buy is a social signal. It tells the world who we are, or, who we want to be.
And there are a couple of really interesting theories about why we do this. The classic one is conspicuous consumption, this idea that we buy things to show off, kind of like a trickle-down effect of trying to copy the rich. But a more modern take suggests our taste is really shaped by our social circles, and trends can trickle up, down, sideways, all over the place. But here's the bottom line. Whether we're buying to look wealthy or just to fit in with our friends, that social pressure to consume is exactly what keeps that environmental treadmill spinning faster and faster.
Okay, let's try to pull all of these big ideas together. We've got these massive competing theories about growth in the planet, and then we have the social dynamics of justice and consumption. So what does all this mean for us today in a world where we live so much of our lives online?
Well, it brings us to a really modern twist on that old idea, the treadmill of digital consumption. I mean, think about it. That constant pressure to upgrade your phone, your laptop, your headphones, just to stay connected and not fall behind, that is a perfect example of the treadmill in action today. We're almost forced to keep buying new stuff just to protect our social lives.
And technology, just like in our big theories, really has two faces here. On one hand, the digital world does offer some potential good. Things like remote work and smart e-commerce can definitely cut down on travel and emissions. We all saw this during the pandemic lockdowns, right? The air in many cities actually got cleaner. But, on the other hand, there are these huge hidden costs. The massive amounts of energy that data centers suck up, the mountains of packaging waste from online shopping, and of course, all the e-waste from that constant upgrade cycle.
So in the end, it all comes back to that same fundamental question. Is technology the solution, or is it just making the problem worse, faster? As more and more of our lives move online, we're facing this choice more directly than ever. Will our digital future bring about that optimistic, clean, modern society, or will it just be a faster, shinier, more high-tech treadmill? And that really is a question for all of us to think about.